So, I'm not sure if the book I'm reviewing today is like in print anymore, but I wanted to talk about it anyway for several reasons. One of those reasons being, for those of you who are well versed in left-hand path magic, this is probably one of the most influential books in that stream, if you know what I mean. Like I don't think the currents of how that developed today would have been possible or as accelerated as it has been if it weren't for this book. So regardless of what you think of the author, which people have a lot of opinions about the group he's been in, and I don't blame them for that, but we're not going to get into that because this is going to be about the book. I feel like this is a book that has to be talked about because people often approach subjects as tackles without understanding how people got to that interpretation in the first place. Okay, so this book is, again, a book that's on the tin. Specifically, the title hints to how it's divided, because how it's divided, it first starts off with the traditional interpretation of Qabalah, or at least a traditional esoteric interpretation perpetuated by Western magicians. There's some stuff about Judaism in there, but I think it's mostly the esoteric bits. That transitions very softly almost and nicely into the inverse of that, the Qliphoth. Most of the ideas about the Qliphoth that you see people talk about today, such as the names and its associations with chakras, and even the pathways, and also just a lot of the talk about demons in relation to that. It mostly came from that part of the book, and also the Goetic magic from part of the book, which is somewhat of a misnomer because they also talk about things from Grimorium Verum and Lizragan Rouge. I see talk about, but it's mostly sigils. So it's mostly the Grimoire tradition, for those of you familiar with that. But that is how the book is structured. And here I kind of summarized what to expect from each part. It's a little more involved than what I put here. However, I feel like the points I make here should be a good summary of what exactly you're getting into when you pick up the book. Especially the Qliphoth part, which has rituals, and in my version, which is published by Ajna, and let me look up real quick what the edition is. I think it's second or third edition. Oh no, fourth printing. So yeah, in the version I have, which is the fourth printing from 2017, if the dates are correct, there's also pictures people painted upon experiencing the stuff as outlined in the book. It's a lot to take in and digest, and it's powerful knowing that people actually tested this out before it's been published. And as a side note, that doesn't really surprise me because a lot of what is in this book has been taken wholesale from Grant, especially the second part. So there is that. So the author does have a PhD in religious studies. He's well versed in the traditions and the esoteric parts of it, so it doesn't surprise me that he is able to communicate a lot of these ideas that are often hidden in some cases, in a very simplified way. But I think as a result of that, like, even when I was reading this book for the first time, it felt more supplementary to other things. It wasn't like the other books I've read that were based off of this, where the author used it as a map for different things, or arguably the book that this takes a lot from, which would be Kenneth Grant's Night Side of Eden, which I have that book, and that is probably one of the most precious books I've had. That side note aside, even that book feels more complete and on topic. So that leads me into what I would recommend if you're interested in this book, because one, this book, I think it's pretty much out of print, if not harder to find in the US, and two, the author is involved in controversy, not like extremely serious controversy, but it's enough that is political. So for those of you who care about that, it's good to know there are other options out there. It's a little harder to find LHP options for stuff like that because of the history of heretical practices of politics. But if you're interested just in the second part of the book, honestly, just read Night Side of Eden. Of course, those of you interested in Qabalah, there's a lot of actual Kabbalistic books. Chicken Qabalah is probably the best beginner book to start out with. And for Goetic magic, that's basically every grimoire from I want to say the 14th, 17th centuries. I'm not into grimoire magic, but it's good to know about this book, however, if you're buying other Left Hand Path books, because a lot of practices and philosophy that goes into it comes from this book, and some authors, regardless of background, will recommend it. So I'm not going to say don't read it. However, you need to know about it if you're practicing certain things, specifically because in many ways it is the foundation of at least one tradition and has influenced quite a few others in its time. I don't regret buying this book for that reason, but I am reviewing it, trying to give advice from the perspective that it is a book that is mostly for the academic reader, and that is not what everybody wants, and it's also something not everybody will be aware of. Alright, I hope that was informative. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see, at the very least, like the video. I would appreciate a subscription too. I try to post a new video every other Saturday as of now, and I hope to see you around.